How you feel about human nature tells you everything you need to know about leadership. If you think human nature has stayed constant over the years, you'll find great value in the words of Socrates, Confucius, Jesus, Shakespeare, and Sarah Breedlove, the first self-made black woman millionaire in the U.S. If you think human nature has evolved over time, you'll see little point in the wisdom of the past and constantly seek out new thinking to guide your approach. Richard Battle falls firmly into the first camp, and he's written several books, including his latest, Americans Who Made America, spotlighting past wisdom for our present and future benefit. And we talked about a bunch of it on this week's podcast.
Hi-ho, hi-ho.
How his great-great-grandmother's 100-plus-year-old table showed him that our actions today can influence folks in the next century. How a 4-minute radio interview in the back office of a car dealership helped a man grieving the loss of his daughter. How an early dead-end job can teach our future self more about leadership than most modern-day gurus. In fact, I can't help but wonder if most so-called gurus take advantage of those who believe in an ever-changing human nature, shellacking ancient wisdom with buzzwords and bullet points for easy consumption. No buzzwords here, just a fresh look at some old-school truths that can help us lead better right now. Welcome to the DesuckifyWork podcast, the show where we cut through the BS and find ways to make work more fun, more human, and less ridiculous. All of which makes your business more profitable, by the way. If you enjoyed this one, please like, share, rate, review, or subscribe to the podcast. Let the desuckifying begin. Here's Richard. Okay, Richard Battle, welcome to the DesuckifyWork podcast.
Well, good afternoon, TJ. Thank you for having us with you today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your story before we go too deep. What do you do for work and how'd you come to be doing it?
Well, currently I'm a speaker, author, and commentator. And a lot of people will ask me if I dreamed about being a writer of books growing up. And I said, my high school English teachers never dreamed I'd read a book, much less write one. And I never dreamed I'd write one, much less 12 at this point.
Nice.
But I started out in the corporate world for many years. But while doing that, I was very involved in civic activities, nonprofits, things of that type nature, political activities. Mm-hmm. I wrote three of the books while I was in the corporate world.
Okay.
And decided I called myself a reformed corporate executive, if you will, from the standpoint that I wanted to get out and do something else that would impact people in a different way for a longer period, if you will. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of my mission now, is to try to do things that would be as applicable and as motivational as and inspiring 50 years from today as they would be today.
Wow. I love that. So knowing all that, I mean, what role does work play in your life?
Well, I work almost as hard as I did in the corporate world, except I don't work for the man now. I am the man. So I determine what I'll do, but it's very interesting because when I was in the corporate world, you'd set goals and you have the blinders on and you'd go straight for the goals. And mm-hmm. I didn't really listen for the spirit or for inspiration from the outside as much. But now I'll set a path, but it's amazing how often there'll be inspiration that will come to me that will divert the path from where I think I'm going to a different direction. And that's been something most interesting in the 12 books I've written, span a variety of genres, but all are in what I would call a personal growth space. I hate the term. I don't like the term self-help because I don't think, being a person of faith, I think the help we get comes from outside of us. It's not us. And so personal growth based on inspiration and hard work and things of that nature, I think is what creates it.
And you mentioned that as you moved away from the corporate world and took the blinders off, that your path has kind of been guided in ways that's been unexpected for you. I mean, does that come down to your faith experience and kind of listening?
Yes, I think so. And it's amazing where and when inspiration will come. And I mean, it can wake me up in the middle of the night with specific things to communicate. It can happen driving down the road, in church, at a ball game, any place at that time. It can come, and it's very awe-inspiring because of that. And every day when I get ready to turn in at night, I kind of reflect back on the day. And when I start the day, I have kind of an idea of what I'd like to get done. And so often I'll look at it and there'll be things that I didn't think I would get done that day that happened because of that spirit coming in and the inspiration to do things I might not have planned for that day.
It's interesting how you've experienced that, because I think for some folks, if you have a plan for a day and the plan gets diverted, it can be a little frustrating. It can be like, I wanted to do this, and this. It sounds like you have a different take on it, that you allow the day to move where the spirit takes you. Is that true?
Well, yes, and that's the difference probably from when I was in the corporate world, because again, I was so focused on my plan and not hearing or seeing the alternative inspiration that if I got diverted, it was frustrating. And so I'm much more at peace when I allow that diversion, because I'll end up accomplishing something that I might not have otherwise if I relied totally on myself.
I want to go back to that corporate time a little bit. I mean, it sounds like, maybe it wasn't a perfect time for you, but I'm curious, what was it what was the hardest thing in that experience for you?
Well, and I was in corporate life without a break, nonstop for 44 years, 8 months, and 2 weeks.
But it was
but it was good. I mean, I started as a salesman in a business-to-business environment for technology, ended up with global responsibility in a technology company. So I had a great experience, great people, but the people that owned this big business that I ended up working for, they asked me why I was leaving when I left, because they said, well, hey, we're here and we're not working for the money, but we enjoy what we do. And I told them, well, that's great, but that's not my dream. I want to do some different things. And I still want to do different things and have more impact in different areas and in different manners than I did before. And that's what excites me, is being able to create something and touch people. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, a man's mind stretched by a new idea never returns to its previous state. And so to me, when we get an idea, it changes our lives. And when it changes our lives, it changes the lives of people we impact and influence. And we never know when or how those ideas will show up. And it's amazing when they do. And we will never see the full impact of it, but we can plant the seed in other people that will start that to grow. And I'll use, in speaking and some of the writing I do, some examples of that where I try to prove that things we'll do today will impact 100 years from today and beyond. And I offer proof to that. And when I discovered that, it changes my whole thought process and decision process, because our culture motivates us to think only of today. If it feels good, do it. And just think of today. Don't worry about the past or the future. Just make your best decision today, when we should be thinking beyond our lifetime and on a much broader scale than we would otherwise.
Wow. Yeah, that is definitely not the way I think most of us are thinking. And you piqued my interest when you mentioned you have some examples that prove that our impact can last up to 100 years. What are some of those examples?
Well, I'll give you two if we have time to fit them in.
Sure.
One, I inherited from my family on my mother's side a table. And my mother, when I was a boy, used to tell me stories that my great-great-grandmother would serve milk and cookies on that table to my great-grandmother and her friends. And my great-grandmother lived until I was 9 years old, so I had a relationship with her.
Mm-hmm.
But being a good Texas boy, when my mother told me that, 100% went in this ear and 99.9% came out this ear. But thankfully, that little 0.1%, stayed there, because
Mm-hmm.
after my mother passed and I was going through her effects, I found a picture of my great grandmother as a 14 or 15-year-old teenager.
Mm.
And of course, I never knew her as that. So that would have been about the time this would have occurred. Then I found this little autograph book that people back when she was a teenager, they would keep. And when friends came over, they would write autographs. They would say, "Oh, you're such a cool person, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
And I looked in that book once, and the autographs were from 1884.
Wow.
And I got to thinking about it, that my great-great-grandmother was an influencer long before that term was ever thought of, because she wasn't just serving milk and cookies. When those kids were there, she was putting ideas into their head, life ideas. And she was influencing their lives, even though they didn't really recognize it at the time. And so I thought about it, that she did that to my great-grandmother, who did the same thing to my grandmother, who did it to my mother, who did it to me, who did it to my daughter.
Yeah.
So I tell people that table is my physical manifestation of that, but every family's got that same experience.
Yeah.
You can think of something that your grandparents may have taught you, and they probably learned it from their grandparents. And you never knew your great-great-great-grandparents possibly,
Right.
but they are influencing you today.
Wow.
And when I think about my ancestors influencing me, that tells me that I will be influencing my descendants. And again, that changes my thought process from what's important today to what's important 100 years from today.
And what do you do with that information, right? So now you have this awareness. What does that change in terms of how you're showing up now?
That's a great question, because I think it puts more responsibility on us to think long term and to realize we're influencing people beyond what we think we are.
Yeah.
It puts a much more responsibility on us than what our culture wants us to think about. And that's what's important. If we want better things in the future, we can impact them today by our behavior and decision process.
What are some of the things that you're thinking about when you think long term? What's the impact you're hoping to put into the world?
Well, I want people I influence to act on principle, to have a proper understanding of human nature, to realize that the wisdom of the ages are at our fingertips. I believe in one of the biggest decisions we make is deciding our position on human nature.
Okay.
Historically, I think it's the foundational decision we make in life, and we can tell how people will act based on that one decision. Historically, people have thought human nature is the same today as it has been since the beginning. The more progressive people think that human nature is evolved and that people are getting better and better and better. When you think human nature has evolved, then that means the wisdom of the ages doesn't mean anything. It means the Bible doesn't mean anything, even as literature. It means our Constitution and Bill of Rights are quote unquote breathing documents. They're not written effectively for us today as they were when they were written. It basically means every generation has to go out and discover on their own how to live. And so to me, I don't believe that's correct. And I'll give you an illustration in a minute. So if you believe that human nature is the same as it has been since the beginning of time, then that means the Constitution and Bill of Rights are as applicable today to us as they were when they were written. It means the Bible and other historic documents are just as impactful. It means that the wisdom of the ages, the Greek philosophers, all these wise people, Confucius, we can tap all of that for our benefit. And so I believe smart people learn from their experience. Brilliant people learn from the experience of others. And I'd rather learn from somebody else's experience without me having to stub my toes, so to speak, from my own experience, which I'll never have all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's the number one decision we have to make. Now, I'll give you a quick illustration. So if you look in the Bible, not as religious document, but just as a piece of literature for this example,
Okay.
everyone pretty much knows the story of Adam and Eve. And so when Adam and Eve were approached by God and asked why they ate from the forbidden fruit, what did they do? They both put their fingers out and started pointing to somebody else to be responsible.
Yep.
Now, go to a little kid's 4 or 5-year-old kid's birthday party, and if somebody spills the Kool-Aid and the mother says, "Who did that?" What happens? All the little kids instinctively start pointing fingers just like Adam and Eve. And if human nature had evolved, we would be beyond that. But it's not.
That's really interesting.
We all avoid accountability the same as it's been since the beginning.
I love that example, and I think the thing that can throw our thinking process off, and I will admit that I struggle with this a little bit. Like there at least appears to be, evolution in terms of societies and how we've been able to develop different kinds of societies and grow and changes that have been made. I mean, in terms of, how violent we've been over time. And I'm not denying that those instincts are still there, but you can look at it and go, we've managed to progress in ways as a society that can easily make us think something's changed in us. We are not the same people as 5,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago or 250 years ago. And so suddenly you start to believe the rules should change. They should be different. And what I see in that too a little bit is like, you can become a little blind to the precariousness of it all. I think about civilization, and I think about my own view of it. And it can be taken for granted in a way, like this is how life is now because we've evolved, right? And not recognize how just subtle little shifts can bring out more of that human nature. So what's your take on, how have we managed to make certain kinds of progress over the years in spite of our human nature kind of being flatlined the whole time?
Well, and I think you're correct in that we grow. And as we grow and learn, we have greater capacity to do things, hopefully greater capacity to serve others. But that base human nature, I don't think's changed. And so that's a kind of a combination. Look at the founders in the preamble of the Constitution. The number one objective was to form a more perfect union. They recognized that they were not perfect and that the people that followed them would not be perfect, but pursuing perfection was the way to get the best version of government and people that we could get. And so to me, that's another illustration of understanding human nature's consistency over time.
So I want to bring this into the world of work just for a bit, because if we accept and believe that human nature has been constant over this time, does that shift how we should think about how we work together and how we structure organizations to make sure that we all work well together?
Well, I think there's an opportunity because we have, again, access to the wisdom of the ages. When I go look and I speak on leadership, for example, what I've figured out after doing it for so many years, most of the people that speak on leadership will give the same principles, if you will. The big difference is their experience and the stories they tell. And so over time, you can apply the same principles at a different time than they were years ago. And so that to me is an illustration of it. And if we forfeited that, trying to invent everything on our own, we would be wasting that opportunity, if you will.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's interesting because I think about leadership development programs and things like that, and simply acknowledging some of these things, I feel like could go a long way. Acknowledging some of the wisdom that's been around forever, that's at the root of this, and that we're not sort of, reinventing something here. It's more about remembering and then reconnecting to that. It almost takes the pressure off in a way.
Well, it does take the pressure off. And just think about it when you have kids. Kids, a lot of times when they're young, won't listen to their parents, but they'll listen to somebody else. Mm-hmm. I love to include in my books quotations from the people that I'm writing about, or just quotations that apply to the principles I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how applicable they are today to whenever they were given. Yeah. You go back to, I'm trying to think who it was, the Greek guy that talked about human nature. He says the only thing consistent, and he said it 2,500 years ago. Yeah. And so it's amazing how applicable they are. And again, when we use that, we can use them today to motivate and inspire people, and they'll listen and recognize that from an ancient philosopher, if you will, better than they may listen to us. Mm-hmm. Mm.
Yeah, it's interesting how the wisdom from a parent can almost be blind to a child. And I don't know if that's just sort of baked into how we're wired, that desire to sort of create our independence and all that stuff.
Yes.
But, effectively the wisdom of our great times 20 can break through in a way that suddenly. And what's funny is what you notice sometimes it's almost like, and I'm guilty of this, when I was, a teenager or 20 something, kind of coming upon some of this wisdom, it's almost like you think you're the ones who's finally discovered it.
Yes.
Right. You think you've found something that nobody else knew. Meanwhile, it's been passed along for millennia.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So let me interject this other story because it applies to work as well.
Okay.
And it applies to all the things we've been talking about. And so one of the profiles I write in my latest book, Americans Who Made America, the 19th century version, is Sam Houston. Mm-hmm. And I love Sam Houston. I talk about his leadership, and he's done some things that are just incredible. But this story has to do with his mother. In 99.99999 ad infinitum, people don't know who his mother was. Her name was Elizabeth, and she died in 1831. Okay, so she's been gone nearly 200 years. Mm-hmm. But what I'm going to say still impacts us today from what she did. So when Sam Houston, who was the only person governor of two states, Tennessee and Texas, by the way, wow. He was the George Washington for Texas. Okay. Leading our Revolutionary War, the first and third president of our republic. So tremendous leader. Mm-hmm. But when he was 19, he was going off with Andrew Jackson for the War of 1812. Mm-hmm. And his mother, bidding him goodbye on the back porch, said, "If you act courageously, this door will always be open to you. Mm-hmm. But if you act the coward, never darken this door again." Mm. But then she gave him a small gold ring, and on the inside of it, so only he could see it, she had the one word, honor. Mm-hmm. He wore that ring every day the rest of his life for over 50 years. He died with it on. That ring's at the San Jacinto Museum just outside of Houston today. Wow. But the part of the story they don't tell that I think is unbelievable is I picture Sam Houston wearing that ring and contemplating important decisions. Mm-hmm. Do I attack the Mexican army tomorrow? Do I vote for secession from the Union for the Civil War? Mm-hmm. How do I handle Mexico after this period of time? Yeah. And I can see him sitting there contemplating and twisting that ring. Mm-hmm. And in his ears, his mother's voice saying, honor, honor, honor. So she influenced all of his important decisions. And his decisions influence us to this day, even outside of Texas, because of the titan that he was. Right. And so when I speak, I tell people, I wish my parents had given me an honor ring as a teenager. Mm-hmm. And I try to plant the seed to people and suggest to them, consider giving your kids or grandkids honor rings, telling them that story and letting them realize that every time you make a decision, think of what's the honorable decision.
Yeah,
it's such a great story.
I love that story. And I love it on two levels, sort of the historic implications of it. But just, when you started describing it, I was imagining him like looking at that ring, feeling that ring, connecting to that message. I mean, I think that message, told or untold, comes through because we can all relate to the concept of having something, whether it's a memento or it could just be some words that live on in our head from our parents, from our grandparents, from somebody that influenced us, that does show up that way. And I think the concept of an honor ring is really interesting and cool. And I think the symbolism of it is powerful because the words alone, I do think they'll stick with you. But I think there is something about physical reminders that amplifies that. Yes. And it's interesting because that goes back to all kinds of ancient cultures and the power of artifacts and symbolism and recognizing that. And so many of the stories come around that. And in many ways, that's been lost today. Like the idea that the value of symbolism and connecting to things in that way. What do you do in your own life to connect to that kind of symbolism?
Well, I think that we mentioned the table earlier.
Yeah.
Knowing that story of Houston, the things that I work on, and in this series I'm working on now, I'm looking at what I call Americans. They had the American-do spirit because 4 years ago I had this inspiration that I was sick and tired of our culture, our politicians, our media telling us that the best of America was over with and that our kids couldn't have lives better than we had.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it. And again, this inspiration came and I was working on a different book. And it said, what made our country was not the government. What made our country were our ancestors with that American-do spirit. When they saw a need, they filled it. When they had a dream, they chased it.
Yeah.
They civilized the country out of the wilderness and overcame great adversities. And so I wrote a leadership book with different essays about that can-do spirit, trying to infuse that into people so that they could prosper better in life and get away from that negative message that's coming in from the outside. And so it was funny. I was talking to a guy on a radio interview and he said, well, you ought to go out and build a hall of fame for these people. And I said, well, let's check into that. And so I looked and lo and behold, in New York City, there's a Great American Hall of Fame. And it's been there since 1900.
Wow.
I'd never heard of it, never seen it. Yeah. When I poll people, when I speak, nobody I know of has ever been there. And so then I got to thinking, well, why build a building that nobody gets to? Why not bring the Hall of Fame to the people? And so that's when I started the 4-book series, that 2 are out and 2 are coming, Americans Who Made America, where I profile people and I try to do like what I'd call a scouting report or a little profile where I put that essence of that can-do spirit that helped them accomplish things. And it's people you'd know and people you wouldn't know, because I want everybody to see themselves in these people. And then each of these volumes, I've got 200 to 300 quotations so the people can speak for themselves as well. Yeah. And so what I'm trying to do is share those people so that the readers or the listeners, when I speak, can say, wow, if they can do what they did, I can do better than I'm doing right now. And that's my objective. I don't want to compare myself to anybody else. That's another head fake that the culture puts on us. Yeah. The only thing I care about is, am I better today than yesterday? Can I be better tomorrow than I am today? That's the only measuring stick we should use.
So when are we at our best? This American-do spirit that you speak of. I mean, I can relate to that. I believe that there is something special about this place and the people who created it. And I can also see how sometimes we get lost, and there's definitely a lot of messages out there that can put a spin on our story. That, I mean, even if you want to acknowledge all the challenges that we've had and all the difficulties that we continue to have, you don't have to necessarily do that in a way that diminishes what's great. And so I wonder for you, what have you noticed that is when we are at our best? What are those qualities? What are those actions that people have taken that really demonstrate what you're talking about with this series?
Well, I think when we're at our best, we are a united country. Mm-hmm. We have a single objective. Everyone contributes. In the Revolutionary War, we had 25,000 soldiers killed, and it had a lot of soldiers, but it was all of the people that supported them also. It took everyone to win. Mm-hmm. And through our history, it takes all of us contributing to be successful. Mm. Whether it's the bricklayer or the firefighter or the school teacher. I mean, everyone who works an honest job every day is contributing to the present and future benefit of the country. Yeah. And that's what's important. So everything we do contributes that way. And so that should help infuse us with that American spirit that we used to have. I think we had it. We definitely had it in World War II because the country was in mortal peril of being defeated at that time. Yeah. There are other times in our history we were at peril of losing our country as well. And so when we're together, we're much better than when we're divided. And we are together more so than we think. And our media and politicians and others try to consistently divide us to their benefit and our detriment.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, it just feels like there's almost a gamification of the political and media process that just, it's designed. I mean, especially certainly in the world of social media, it's just designed to get us angry at each other and create engagement and all that stuff. And as a result, I think I agree. I think we are more united than we think. I mean, I think you see that just in real life. I mean, we're still able to work well together and do good things together. But there is this cloud that sort of hangs over things, and it can make the moment we're in right now feel a bit rudderless. Like we don't have this shared purpose or vision for who we want to be. And therefore that comes all the way down to the level of what are the things we're trying to build? What are we trying to create into the world? What are the ideas that we're championing to make our world better? They're not always grounded or rooted in anything because we're a little rudderless. What do you think, some of these lessons that you've taken from these folks who've come previously, what maybe what's one that you'd like to share that feels like, okay, that really connects to where we are right now and can help us, get back to some of that spirit of really being aligned around some shared vision?
Well, and I think there's a similarity going back to COVID that we're in right now, because at that time, people were paralyzed because of COVID. Yeah. And I would tell people there's two types of people during COVID. The same thing right now, if they watch too much of the political news and things, there's the same thing. People can be exasperated and say, well, I'm frustrated and I can't do anything to change what's going on. Versus, and so the common thing that I write about with these people, they didn't listen to the negativity. Most of the negativity and critics have never created anything. All they've done is be a critic to the people trying to create something. So the more we listen to them, all they do is keep us from accomplishing anything. I'd rather listen to positive things and try to make a difference. I tell people that none of us can do everything we want to do. But let's pick out one thing and focus on it and try to accomplish it, whether it be in public service or our own career or family or whatever. Once we do that, let's pick out another one. and let's make a difference where we can and try to push that negative influence out. And the people, to me, like in COVID, there were people that sat there for a couple of years and were paralyzed and didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And the people who were working hard and still contributing and doing things, they came out like shot out of a cannon through COVID because they didn't sit there and do nothing. And we're at the same place now. So if you want to be lethargic and do nothing, don't expect growing very much.
Yeah.
If you want to grow and be better in the future, we need to be working today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting as you describe that. I can imagine a future book where you look at some of the folks who shined in moments like COVID and more recent historic moments, and people who modeled some of that same kind of behavior that when you go back to the 1800s or whatever and look at some of those folks.
Yeah. So let me tell the story that you ask about. So Sarah Breedlove was born 1867. She was the first person in her family born free because she was African American. And as she grew up in her family, she had to take odd jobs as a kid, try to contribute to the family. She got married at 13 to get away from that home life. And she worked, taking in laundry, just doing any kind of odd jobs, hoping to earn $1 a day. But she realized that if she wanted to make something of herself, she would have to do it. And lo and behold, she had a scalp issue and she couldn't find a remedy. So she worked and concocted something, and it worked for her. She shared it with her friends. They started buying it from her. So then she decided to focus on that and started a company and changed her name to the same name of the company, Madam C.J. Walker. She became, and just imagine this, 1870s roughly, a Black woman business person. Think how hard it was for a woman business person, much less a Black woman business person.
Yeah.
She developed that hair treatment company and other products, became the first self-made Black woman millionaire in the United States.
Wow.
That accomplishment. And she said that she realized if she was going to make something of herself, she would have to pick herself up and do it. That by itself was terrific.
Yeah.
But I'm also more impressed because once she became rich, she just didn't spend money and have a good time. She mentored other young Black females and tried to inspire and bring them along to help them and their families in the future as well. And so she gave back and lived an example and as an encourager and a mentor. And to me, that story is so inspirational, regardless of whether you're female or Black or not, whatever. It's an American-do story.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can feel that one right in your gut, even as you're talking about it. And it brings up something that, the work you're doing and the stories you're telling, it feels like, this is just my take, that there's a whole sort of set of learning and courses that could be brought in, and I'd say as early as elementary school, and like there's little bits of this that maybe shows up, but it's really valuable to learn the grand names, right? The George Washingtons and all that stuff. And I think that's obviously critical and important. But this sort of subgenre of the more everyday types of people who found a way to stand out and make something in the face of challenges that many of us today would look at and go, I can't even imagine, being that woman back in 1870. Like those, we don't hear those all that often. And I feel like the impact of that, sort of learning those stories growing up, in some ways is more inspiring because I may be like, I don't know, I can't picture myself as George Washington, right? But I can sort of picture myself as this woman or any other man or woman over the time who's simply done a thing and made something of themselves. And that sticks with you in a way that you feel like you can walk with that, where the bigger stories sometimes, they can inspire and point you, but they're not right there with you. I mean, what do you think about turning some of this stuff into, getting it into curriculum and that kind of thing?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, and that's certainly one option. But as wrote these and writing the next one right now, one of the things I recognize is our school systems are not sharing these inspirational stories enough.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I think we as parents and grandparents have to try to help educate our children and grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And so I've written these volumes so that late middle school and above, if they're a reader and if they like history, they can read it. Each of the profiles, maybe 800, 1,000 words with a picture and then some quotations from that person. They can be read in just a few minutes. Mm-hmm. So it's not very heavy reading. So parents or grandparents can read it to kids as stories, and or kids and school, high school, college can use it for projects and speeches and other type of material as a reference, if you will. So that is the foundation. Hopefully it can grow beyond that. Yeah. But I just want to try to get the stories and the inspiration in people's hands so they can influence those in their sphere, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I think sort of just get it in as many people's hands as possible is a good approach, but it really does open up like the idea of, helping folks see how they can become sort of somebody sort of worthy of one of these stories and creating sort of projects around folks, helping them develop their own American story. I mean, I can see the legs of this. And I think it's beautiful. I mean, I think it's a really good example of you doing what you talked about, which is trying to have that impact that goes on for 100 plus years. And I want to come back to you a little bit because you've written a number of books. I mean, you've got this series going now. You've written other books, and you shine a light on a lot of people who've done these things. But you've done some things, and you've overcome some things. I mean, you wrote a book called The Unopened Present, which is a heart-wrenching story, and it's this collection of scriptural truths, but it's rooted in your own personal story. Are you open to sharing a bit about how that story?
Well, yes, and it's an inspirational story. It's not the grief story that I wrote about after losing my son and surviving grief by God's grace, but this is an inspirational story versus a grief book. Yeah. When my son was 6 months old, I was concerned, being an older father, I might live long enough to teach him life's important lessons. So I wrote him a letter and said, if I'm gone, here they are. And I outlined 43 lessons. Well, he passed away 3 months later. So he never got to open the present of the letter. Wow. And I included it as an appendix in the grief book, and it sat for about 20 years. Well, in 2022, when Father's Day week was coming up, I got did a lot of interviews about Father's Day, loss of my son, things of that nature. And I was doing an interview, which was only 4 minutes long, that was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I was doing it from a car dealership sales lounge at 7:37 in the morning. I had to drop my truck off at 7. I had to find a place to do this 4-minute interview. Wow. While I'm doing it, I can hear the door open and somebody walk behind me, but I didn't know who it was. And when I'm driving home, the phone rings. I don't recognize the number. I don't answer it. I call it back, and it was from the dealership. And, of course, the first thought is, well, they screwed my truck up. I got to go back. And it was an hour drive from my house. Yeah. And the guy said, were you the person talking in the sales lounge? And he didn't know I was on a radio interview in Iowa, and here I was in Texas. And I said, yes. And he goes, well, I just wanted to call and thank you. Last night, I prayed to God all night long to give me some relief from my pain, and I think he sent you. I lost my daughter 2 months ago.
Oh, wow.
And every time I tell that story, it just gives me goosebumps because we never know. He didn't know I was on the radio. The people on the radio didn't know. Some person in Texas overheard half the conversation. And I was talking to a friend. He said, that was a God moment. You need to take that story and tell it and then share the letter and take the letter and add to it, add some content, add some scripture for the faith-based people, make that letter come alive so people today could use that.
Yeah.
And so the whole motto of the book is that my son couldn't open the present of the letter, but this book is a present that can be opened by the reader any and every day.
Wow.
And so it's there for young people to learn life lessons and or parents to help remember, oh gosh, I need to make sure I teach my child this. Because when we're parenting, so often we're reactionary and we're not thinking strategically on what we want to teach them.
Yeah.
And so this kind of gives you a little bit of a footpath, if you will.
Wow. I mean, that's an amazing story. Obviously, sad, obviously, that you went through that, obviously. But I love how you turned it into something, and
Thank you.
And you mentioned, the impact it had on this person at the car dealership. And I think that's a really potent example of just how hard it can be sometimes to recognize where we're going to have an impact. And in fact, that then feels like a call to just be who you believe you can be, and believe in and act in ways that you feel are honorable and worthy of who you are, so that when those moments of sort of serendipity show up, you're effectively increasing the odds of your impact, even when you can't plan for it. Yeah, you're going to go and give a speech and you're going to write a book, and that's sort of a planned way of having an impact. But I can't think of a much more powerful piece of impact that maybe you could have in the course of your life than the one you had right there in that small little back office at the car dealership.
Yeah. And who knows what impact that may have on the future from him and his family and descendants. We never know. And measuring output, like a lot of people come up to me and the first question they'll ask is, well, how are book sales? And I'll tell them that's not my only calculus.
Yeah.
Because book sales today, I like that, but it's those seeds that I may never see the results from. Planting those seeds of inspiration and encouragement are more important.
So if you kind of bundled up all of what you're doing here, the books, the speaking, the moments, you do these nice little moments on YouTube. I've seen, what are those called? You do these
Life's Daily Treasure, which was from a book I did 4 or 5 years ago.
All of that stuff, if you were to try to encapsulate that into the impact and the mark you are wanting to leave on the world, what is that?
Well, I just hope it's a positive example and an encouragement, and giving people hope for themselves and their futures as well, that they can maybe have a little bit better life than they think they can at the moment.
What is one thing that any of us can do right now to improve our connection with others in our lives?
Oh gosh, that's such a great question. I think recognize that we can be an encourager to people. One of the things I tell people is encouragement's the best gift we can give anybody else. And so I try to suggest to people, try to find at least one person a day you can encourage. And if you do that, you'll never know when that piece of encouragement may blossom and change their lives and the lives of all the people they influence. And it's such a simple thing because it doesn't cost us anything. We won't pull a muscle, and there are no calories in a word of encouragement.
I love that. And it just reminds me of moments in my life where I think I just gravitated towards people who had that spirit, and I think that it is in many ways, we're all seeking that. We're all looking for those moments that kind of just give us that little bit of fuel to get over the next hump. Right?
Encouragement's fuel. Yes. Yeah. Well, think about if you're playing a sport, which coach inspires you more, the one that yells at you and tells you how bad you are all the time, or the one that tells you, hey, you can do it?
Yeah, no, I remember that. I I played football my freshman year in high school, and I had this one coach who I was not the most athletic kid, but he called me this diamond in the rough. He's like, you've got certain qualities that I see that like you've got some of this grit that I see. And I was like, you see that? I'm like, because I'm not seeing it. But it motivated me. I was like, okay, well, let me try to bring that out more. So yeah, I love that. What conversation aren't we having right now that you feel like we need to have?
Oh gosh, that's such a tough question, I think, right now. Yeah. I think, we go out of the way, especially today, not to have conversations about our faith and about our political beliefs. And those two things are very large, but we have to approach both of those with the viewpoint that person may not agree with anything or some of the things that we might agree on or we might believe. Yeah. And we need to respect that difference of opinion with people. And I think we used to be able to do that better than we can today. Yeah. Today, I think it's much more, if they don't agree with everything with me, then, they're not my friend. Yeah. And that's a sad thing. I lost a 40-year-long friend over an election a few years ago because he just couldn't tolerate that I wouldn't agree with him. And he lost two other friends for the same reason. Wow. And I didn't care how he wanted to vote or anything, but I didn't want that to be a wedge between our friendship. And so to me, like I said, there's so much more alike and we need to focus on that. But yet we can acknowledge the differences and yet respect the differences.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, obviously, you look at the culture now and you look at some of the violence that's been springing up around some of this kind of thinking, right? Where it's to not only view folks with different opinions, different belief systems as, that's interesting and different, but to see them as literally my enemy, that doesn't go anywhere good. And I think what it does also is it leaves a lot of possibility on the table because we're no longer connecting with people simply because they don't share every last bit of our belief system. And so somebody that could become somebody you form a business with, somebody that you could, collaborate with on something or come up with some crazy new idea together because you come from different places even. All that's just sitting there unstirred. And I think that's a shame as much as simply, the lost friendships and all that are awful, but the lost possibility for who we are as human beings, I think is just as big.
Well, people ask me, can we heal? Can the country heal?
Yeah.
What do we have to do to come together? Well, what gives me hope is looking at what happened in the 1800s. For 30 years before the Civil War, there was a building disagreement. Then we had this horrible Civil War, 600,000 to 700,000 soldiers die. And then we have this period afterwards that the country finally healed. It wasn't linear. It wasn't easy. It wasn't short term to accomplish. But those people rose to the occasion and sacrificed their personal ambitions and the party ambitions to put the country first. And I don't see much of that today. I see too many people with selfish ambitions and party ambitions, and the country is suffering. And so if we want to heal, we've got to come together and compromise and learn to work and live together.
Yeah. And I would argue that mentality, it bleeds down into everything. I mean, I think about the workplace, and if you are stuck in this us versus them mentality, and then you bring that into a workplace or you bring it into a family relationship or a nonprofit or whatever, you're starting in a negative place. I mean, you just have to scratch and claw just to get to break even, as opposed to showing up and saying, I'm here to work with people to do great things, and I'm here to see each other in their full humanity, not some caricature that I've made up in my mind based off of some of their beliefs.
No, absolutely.
So I've asked you a handful of questions here. I'd love to give you an opportunity to pose something to our audience. Do you have a question you'd be willing to share to the audience?
Wow, that's a great question. I think that one of the things that people ought to ask themselves are how do they want to, where do they want to be at the end of their work life?
Mm,
Where do they want to be at the end of their life? And
yeah.
are they taking steps to get there? And
Hmm.
one of the things I see, especially people retiring without any other purpose once they leave the workforce,
Hmm.
and they are miserable because
Yeah.
they have no purpose.
Hmm.
And so I think it's important. The end of the work life comes much faster than we think it might. And
Yeah.
so I think it's important for people to sit back and start thinking earlier, not only about financial retirement,
Yeah.
but what is the purpose in life? And yes, vacations are nice and travel's nice and everything else. But
Hmm.
I'm a believer as long as we have breath, we have opportunity to influence others in positive ways
Yeah.
and as well as enjoy ourselves during
Hmm.
that period.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think certainly when you're younger, it seems so far off that you can't really attach to it. And part of me wonders like this idea that you've spoken about of reconnecting with sort of the wisdom of the ages can help us sort of connect with time and our mortality and the finiteness of life, in a way that allows us to see it without the fear that I think that maybe would come up if you just kind of looked at it from a personal me perspective versus recognizing how much this is the cycle of life and these other folks and here's how they've managed to think about the longer term. It feels like that could go a long way towards helping us
Well, yeah,
think
that was
more
one of the
deeply.
lessons I learned that helped me immensely after the loss of my son, but it also applies in other areas as well. And when in grief, when I focused on myself, I hurt more.
Mm,
And when I found out that if I focused on helping others, the pain would subside while I was helping others.
mm,
And it's been the same thing even outside of grief.
yeah.
When I focus on myself, then I make more selfish decisions and short term decisions. When I
Hmm.
focus on things that can help others, I make better decisions and better long term decisions.
Yeah. I believe that. Yeah. And I know I'm right there with you. I've definitely, you get too inward focused sometimes and it's not a great place to be. Yeah. So this is the DesuckifyWork podcast. I'm curious for you, if you could wave a magic wand and fully desuckify the world of work, what does that world look like?
Oh, two things I think. One is I would wish everyone could work a job that they would enjoy. And but part of that gets there is people realizing, and a lot of times corporate leadership's not very good at telling people how important every job is and
Mm,
how it contributes to the overall success of business as
hmm.
well as of the country, for example.
Yeah.
And so use an example, a teenager that says, I don't want to go to work at McDonald's and flip burgers.
Hmm.
Well, to me, every job that's legal and ethical
Yeah.
is a job we can learn life lessons. And so the third book I wrote was called The Four-Letter Word That Builds Character. And it came about, I went to a self-development course and they said, your homework for next week is what one thing did you learn from your first job?
Mm,
Well, I went home that night and I started thinking all these things that gave me lifetime impact for my job as an 11-year-old paperboy.
mm,
And I made a list of 14 of them. I was promoting another book. And so I put that list in a drawer. 4 years later, I pulled it out and wrote the book. And I wanted to illustrate to young people that even working at McDonald's or throwing papers or some job, I mean, I shoveled sludge at a sewer plant part of the
mm.
summer.
Well,
So even disgusting jobs, you
yeah.
can learn lessons that can help you the rest of your life. It's
Mm,
much better working early and learning those lessons than waiting until you're in high school, college, or beyond.
mm,
And so if we can get our young people to realize that yes, I may not like this work, but it's going to help me down the road if I'm just patient enough, then they'll perceive that it's more reasonable to go do those jobs.
yeah. I think it's an important message. And I think it is one that certainly parents and society at large, I do think there's not a great conversation around that, to speak about the value of learning some of those lessons early, to acknowledge like, yeah, that job may suck in some ways, you're
Yes.
scooping sewage or whatever, right? But that there's value in it, and that it's actually going to guide you and help you be better prepared to figure out what your true calling and your true purpose from a work perspective is. I mean, that's a lot of the lessons in that stuff can be learning, one, things you don't like, but even within the work that doesn't appeal to you, the parts of it that you do like. Why am I happier when I'm doing this part of my job at McDonald's than I am in this part of my job at McDonald's, or scooping sewage or whatever? And why is it that I respond more to that manager than I do to that manager? What is it about that person? And I think when you're 11, 12, or 14, 15, 16, getting those early jobs, I think to expect that a kid is just going to fully pull all of that and absorb all of that without some guidance from those of us in a position to give it is maybe expecting too much, even though some of those lessons will stick. Providing more of a roadmap like you've done with your book and like you're talking about, and how parents can just instill that. And it comes back to that ring, how do you want to show up in this place that maybe isn't exactly where you want to be? You can choose how you show up.
Well, you're right. And you're right. That's where the parents have an opportunity to change somebody's future life with just a few comments at the right time, and talking to somebody about the experience. The burger or the milkshake machine was broken. I couldn't make the milkshakes, and what would you do about it? And just talking through some things like that. There's opportunities, and I think a lot of great parents do, but we need more uniformity in that, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. So one of the things I like to do on my show that's a little silly, but I'm going to invite you to participate, is I have sound effects on my show. If you've listened to my show, you'll hear cats meowing and other sort of strange sounds. And I always invite our guests to make their own sound and contribute to that. So I would like to invite you to share a desuckified sound effect that will show up somewhere during the intro of our show.
Oh gosh, that's the hardest question you've asked. I'm not real musically inclined, so it makes it even harder to think of a sound effect.
Okay.
Wow, I'm coming totally at a blank. You just made me speechless almost.
Is there a sound you like to make sometimes? A call, a whistle, or whatever, like something that you're kind of known for, like a reaction that you make when people say something that blows you away?
I guess I'll use the one, hi ho, it's off to work we go, which used to be from the old Disney movie. And people used to sing and whistle that years ago. And I don't think many people are as enthused about it as they used to be.
Yeah. Can you give it to me with a little more energy?
Hi ho, hi ho.
I love it. Well, that will show up in the early part of the show, and I appreciate your willingness to play along. So the last question I always ask is where can people find out more about the work you're doing, the books you're writing, the speaking you're doing, all that good stuff?
Well, I appreciate that very much. My website is richardbattle.com. Mm-hmm. You can email me, richard@richardbattle.com. Mm-hmm. All books on the website are signed. If you'd like one inscribed for a gift, email me, richard@richardbattle.com. After you order, we're happy to inscribe them. We sell a lot of books for gifts for young people, and that season's coming. Mm-hmm. We also have all 12 books on Amazon. Mm-hmm. If you'll go Richard V. Battle, the list should come up, including 11 of them are Kindle and 8 are in audio.
Oh, nice. Are you on LinkedIn or any other platforms?
LinkedIn, Richard V. Battle. We're at Richard V. Battle on X, for example.
Okay, awesome. Well, I will share all of that in the show notes so people can track you down. And I hope some folks not only track you down, read your books, but really absorb some of what you're talking about, because I think we need more of this kind of conversation and this kind of the work you're doing to help us see what's possible and get the noise out of the way.
Yes.
and connect to what's, I think, much more deeply true about us as humans and as Americans.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
Very much so.
Yeah. Well, thank you,
That's
Richard.
the opportunity.
Yeah, I
Thank
appreciate you
TJ.
coming on. This was delightful. Take care. Bye-bye.
God bless them. God bless America.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the DesuckifyWork podcast. And a huge thanks to Richard for bringing a boatload of wisdom to the show. You can follow Richard on LinkedIn and check out his site at richardbattle.com, where you can learn more about each of his 12 books. If you enjoyed the conversation and would like to help your teams bring their absolute best to work, I invite you to schedule a free half-hour discovery session. Type meow in the calendar invite, and I'll also send you a free DesuckifyWork t-shirt. Bye, everyone.